Good morning, good morning, good morning. How the devil art thou? So, I did a video recently where I discussed the individual act of a story and how it is a story within a story. And I also did one mentioning how a scene is a story within the story that's within the story, and how all of these have their own act structure. And I've also done a video in the past talking about the lock system, which is a way of developing a plot for your story. So, if an act is a smaller story within the bigger story, and it has its own 3-act structure, does that mean it has its own plot? And the same question can be presented to a scene. If a scene is a smaller story within the smaller story that's within the bigger story, and they all have their own act structures, an individual act having a 3-act structure and a scene having a 3-act structure, does this too have a plot? And the answer is yes. An individual act will have its own plot and a scene will have its own plot. Like I said before, this is due to something known as fractal theory, which once again, I am not going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to save that for a different video, possibly a longer video. Now this brings up another question. If you can develop a plot for your entire story using the lock system, which I highly recommend, does that mean you can use the lock system to develop the plot of an individual act? And can you use the lock system to develop the plot of an individual scene? You could. There's nothing to say that you can't. And if that's what you want to do, go forth and do exactly that. But with acts and scenes, I recommend that you use something else. It's not really an acronym. It doesn't really make up a word that I've discovered, unless there is a word called OOMS. And it goes like this. It's like the lock system, it contains 4 elements. With the lock system, you have LOCK, lead, objective, conflict, knockout, ending. With acts and scenes, this is what you have. OOOS. Objective, obstacle, outcome, surprise. Now you may be thinking that sounds a little similar to the lock system, but it really isn't. At the beginning of your act, or at the beginning of your scene, the lead of that act, or the lead of that scene, the lead of that storyline will have an objective, and that objective needs to be clear at the very beginning of the act and at the very beginning of the scene. As I mentioned when it came to defining an act, each act ends with a new goal being set for the lead of the story or storyline. So therefore, they have an objective. There has to be an obstacle that they have to face, because as I've mentioned before, if your lead has an objective and they can obtain it like that, it makes for a boring story. So there has to be some sort of obstacle that they have to face. Then there's outcome. I really like outcome because there's nothing to say that the outcome has to be good. There's nothing to say that the lead of that scene or that act has to succeed in obtaining their objective. The outcome can be anything you like. And then surprise. Very similar to when it comes to the structure of a scene having prompt, or to the structure of an act having a new goal being set. There is some sort of surprise, something that the reader may not have seen coming. Maybe a miniature twist in the tale, if you will. This is all up to you. But as long as you have an objective, and there's an obstacle, and there's an outcome, and there's a surprise, then you have a really good basis for the plot of the individual act and the individual scene. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video right there. I could talk more about it, but I'm looking in my viewfinder and I can see that little red flashing sign that lets me know that the camera's about to die anytime soon. So I'm going to wrap it up there and just say I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you have found it helpful and useful. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and most importantly, stay awesome.